Hello dear viewers, and welcome back to the ancient dwarven hold of our ancestors. Today I have a treat indeed, as I will be talking about the game Warhammer Dark Omen. Dark Omen, as I will now call it, is a real-time strategy game set in the old world of fantasy Warhammer. It was developed by Mindscape with Games Workshop and was published by Electronic Arts. Dark Omen was originally released in 1998, with its modern release on GOG in December 2025. In Warhammer Dark Omen, you will take on the role of Commander Bernhardt and the Grudgebringer mercenary army. You will fight your way across the Empire of Man, uncovering mysterious happenings with the undead. You take control of units in battle, trying to outmaneuver enemy armies, charging into combat and letting roar your mighty great cannons. Before we get cracking, dear viewers, I think it would be a good idea to briefly mention GOG, or Good Old Games. They are a digital storefront like Steam, where you can buy games DRM free. That means when you buy the games, you own them, with no additional things to worry about, like third-party authentication. They also work with developers to bring back old games from the past, making them playable on modern systems. They have a dream list where the community can vote for games they wish to be brought back and to the GOG storefront. Dark Omen was one of the very first games I voted for years ago, and here we are today playing it. Of all the games wishlisted on Good Old Games, Dark Omen for me, and it seems a lot of other people, was the top one we hoped might be brought back to working order on modern systems. It has literally been wished for as long as I've been buying games from them, so years. And then one night, the GOG launcher stated that Dark Omen was now available. And here we are, I'm making a video about Warhammer Dark Omen in 2026. 28 years after its initial release. Wonderful! The game is set sometime before the end times in old world Warhammer fantasy, before the world was destroyed and the introduction of the Age of Sigmar. Proper old school fantasy where the Empire of Man is a major power, and there be orcs and goblins and other foul things assailing it from within and without. There be dwarves too, dear viewers, and that's great. The main gameplay evolves around your army moving to different locations across the Empire, discussing the situation with other characters, and then heading to the battlefield to fight it out. The dialogue takes place between Commander Bernhardt and other characters, like leaders from the local area, wizards, counts, and even the Emperor Karl Franz himself. They each have a 3D portrait which is animated as they speak and listen to each other. The characters will discuss the matter at hand, which is usually about whatever enemy you're about to encounter or where you need to head to. Nostalgia is all part of this, of course, but at the time, and now, the talking heads of characters does a good job of conveying the situation to the player, along with showing perhaps the demeanour of different characters and their motivations. The look and feel of the game is obviously of its time when 3D graphics were just starting to become integrated into the industry. When the characters are discussing, they are featured in 3D, along with the physical battlefields themselves. The levels are good enough in portraying various locations of the Empire and beyond, while also providing three-dimensional features of the land, like hills and rocks and such, that will play into how you deploy and where you move and fire your units. The units and characters of all combatants are rendered as two-dimensional sprites. Again, they can look of their time, but I think they did a great job with portraying the units in game, so that you can clearly see what they are and are all about. I like a good sprite in a game, and these are cool. If you zoom in, you can watch them swiping and smacking each other in melee. The sound design is of course of the time too, but the background music sounds good to these old dwarf ears, and I have many a memory of listening to it when I was a younger dwarf. I think the performances of the voice actors are great and fitting to the sort of characters they are portraying. Commander Bernhardt comes across as a grizzled old veteran of the battlefield who is eager to take the coin from local lords, but won't put his men in danger without good cause. The Emperor Karl Franz comes across as a measured statesman, while the Witch Hunter General comes across as an insidious toad. The enemies too come across as you might expect. Orcs and goblins sound like they do in other media, the old here we go, here we go. Other more sinister creatures like enemy necromancers give off that evil demeanour. During combat, characters from both sides will pop up as events occur and talk to you through the talking heads that I mentioned before, which adds a lot to the atmosphere. Most of the game will take place on the battlefield, with you taking control of the Grudge Bearers, the mercenary army led by Commander Bernhardt. It is made up of classic Empire of Man units such as crossbowmen, foot soldiers, knights on horseback, and of course, various types of cannon. When battle is engaged, you'll be taken to the battlefield where you can deploy your troops. This is a very important part of the proceedings. Where you set up your troops can play a critical part in deciding the course of a battle. If you leave units exposed, they could get overrun. If you place your ranged units on a hill, you'll get more range and line of sight. If you place your cavalry in a good position to countercharge an advancing unit, you can spell doom for the enemy. What is really important is where you set up your static artillery, i.e. your cannons, mortars and so on. In Dark Omen, once placed, you will not be able to move them over the course of the battle. This means you've got to place them where it can cover the maximum amount of battlefield with a minimal number of features blocking line of sight. What is cool is that when you place units, if that gives them a line of sight to an enemy, they will become visible on the battlefield. With this knowledge, you can place cannons in such a way as to get the most out of their destructive potential. You will have to contend with placement being a bit wonky sometimes, because the engine won't let you place units in certain spaces, even though they look like they would fit and should fit. It's part of being a venerable old game. Once units have been deployed, the battle will begin. It is here that your battle acumen will be tested. Woe betide the commander who rushes his units onto the battlefield only to get shot to bits by some arrow-flying gobbos or skeleton archers. Dark Omen is not an easy game, so you need to do all you can to tip the balance in your favour. This means trying to blast as many units to pieces as you can with your cannons before they get anywhere near your front line. And oh how wonderful it is to get a direct hit with artillery, sending baddies flying all over the place. Being a dwarf, as I am, my usual strategy is to be very cautious with moving troops further up towards the enemy. Let them come to you is the old dwarven tale. It is good to try and hit everything you can with artillery fire and then ranged units like archers and crossbowmen before finally engaging them in melee combat. This gives you the greatest chance of killing the enemy and keeping your casualties to a minimum. What is important to note is friendly fire. Don't put units in front of a cannon's arc of fire unless you want your troops to be blown to bits, and stop your crossbowmen from firing as you're about to charge one of your units in. Just like in the tabletop game, when you want to engage in melee combat with an opposing unit, your unit will have to make a charge into them or be charged themselves. And like on the tabletop, you will want to be the one doing the charging, as it gives a bonus to the ensuing combat. You'll get character portraits coming up and shouting "Charge" as they rush into combat. Once an enemy is engaged in melee, the two sides will fight it out, with the stronger side usually coming up as victor, but not always. This is done automatically and is calculated on the various stats of the troops and their armour and such, as well as anything like a magical banner or weapon or a strong character leading them. It's always good to make sure the odds are stacked in your favour. Hopefully you've shot them to pieces on the way over, so they are easy to pick off. Otherwise, don't just charge them in with one unit, charge them with a second in the flanks or rear to assure the enemy's destruction and tales of great victory at the end. You will eventually get wizards too, that can stride the battlefield by themselves. These units are incredibly powerful because of the magic that they wield. The Fire Mage, for example, is able to cast fireballs and pillars of flame, which can do massive damage to the enemy units, making them fearsome combatants. But mages wear little armour and can easily be shot from afar with ranged attacks, so be careful. Sadly, you cannot place them within units to give them some form of shelter from incoming fire. The Winds of Magic in Dark Omen is present here like the older versions of Warhammer Fantasy. Roughly every 30 seconds the Winds of Magic will blow, giving your mages mana, but it is a fickle thing, and how much you get relies on the whim of the wind. Between combats, you can recruit troops to replenish your units, as well as levelling up those units with better armour, so that they are more fearsome in battle. The gold for this is earned through battle, and take note, it is finite, so you must try not to lose too many troops in a battle, lest you find yourself unable to field troops at full strength. Because of how much of an impact fielding undermanned units is, I would recommend redoing a mission where you took too many losses. It can compound with you taking more and more losses and being unable to replenish them. As I said, the combat is no joke, especially the latter half of the game, so you really need to do all you can to preserve the health of your units. Troops also gain experience, levelling up once they reach a certain threshold. They will only get experience if they are actively engaged in combat, so try and get melee units some action and not just rely on your artillery and ranged units to kill everything, as you'll need them stronger for the later parts of the game. Another thing I would suggest is to try and destroy all forces you can, rather than have them run away, as they can if their morale gets too low. If you wipe them out completely, any magical items they might be holding can be picked up by your own troops and used in other battles. Blow up some buildings too, as they might hide something as well. And there is a good mix of baddies that you will fight over the course of the game, featuring orcs and goblins, as well as various types of undead, and brigands too. No chaos or skaven and such, but it is still varied enough not to be too boring. The theme of this game is of course undead, so this will feature prominently. Once you reach the later parts of the game, you should hopefully be adept at destroying zombies and ghouls alike. I really enjoy this kind of real-time strategy, especially in the old world of fantasy Warhammer. Being a general, trying to field the right troops in the right places, drawing enemies into your lines of fire, and blowing them to bits with cannon fire is very satisfying, as well as decimating an enemy unit in melee and then running them down. There is a lot of nostalgia going on here, and frankly my opinion is very biased, because I grew up playing the game, but it really is a lot of good fun and tactically challenging enough to keep you interested. A battle can go pear-shaped rather quickly if you're not careful, so you'll need to be aware of everything happening on the battlefield. Indeed, each battle can be like a puzzle, where you have to figure out what the right tactic is. Is there something you're missing? Like, does the Fire Mage have that teleport spell this mission for a reason? It feels good when you figure out a strategy that works. Don't let up though, because it can still go wrong quite quickly if you forget to stop a cannon firing into your own unit, so be careful. Dark Omen definitely shows its age, with the older graphics and UI, which is quite dated, and I would like an active pause where you could give orders while everything is frozen for a moment, as things can get quite hectic at times, but the shell of the game is still quite formidable. Being able to save mid-battle would also be nice, as some battles take a long time, with things going well for a while, then you have to restart because you lost a fight right at the end. Perhaps that is simply the way of things. The pathing for some of the units can be a bit dodgy. As I mentioned, when placing units at the start of the battle, spaces where it seems a unit could go through turn out to be impassable. This can be a bit frustrating, especially if the unit then goes for a wander around the back to try to get somewhere near where you wanted them to go, ending up way out of position. This is one of the eccentricities of the game that you'll need to get used to. The story is interesting, with the voice dialogue of characters adding to the seriousness and importance of proceedings. If you're looking for a fancy new strategy game, I guess there is Total Warhammer for that, but if you would like a more story-based approach, concentrating just on the goings-on of a single army, then you cannot go wrong with Warhammer Dark Omen. After all, with as many votes as it received to get the good old game's treatment, it has to be doing something right. I think it is very much worth supporting endeavours such as this. If we do, then GOG can keep going and bring back other old games from oblivion so that we might enjoy them forever. I guess my final thoughts here are not just about this wonderful game, but about game preservation in general. GOG do a lot for this, which I think should be supported, along with any other entity that cares about keeping old classic games around, so they aren't lost to the ether. Also, Warhammer itself is great. The old world brings back the classic Warhammer fantasy setting, allowing us to field the armies from these times in great battles. So check that out too, dear viewers. And there we go, an unapologetically biased look at the absolute gem of a video game that is Warhammer Dark Omen. Hopefully I may have swayed you into checking out this game, or at the least you enjoyed the ramblings of this old dwarf. Thank you, and I shall see you next time.